Backhands it up, the Penguins will change it. If they're able to come out relatively easy, here's Keith Primo with it first. Primo cuts the inside, scores! There it is! Keith Primo! The much maligned center of the Philadelphia Flyers wins this game in the fifth overtime.
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah, and I'm here with Chef B, who's going to tell us about one of our sponsors here. Chef?
Yeah, O&B Puckcast is now brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. The winter months can be especially hard on our homes, from roof damage and peeling siding to frozen pipes and toilet overflows. Call Summit Public Adjusters before you call your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be stressful and confusing. Let Summit Public Adjusters take the stress out of the claim process by having our guys work for you. Get the most for your money and your repairs. The next time the big snow or the rain leaves you with some home damage, contact us for a free consultation. Summit Public Adjusters are licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Learn more at summitpublicadjusters.com or call 215-752-0560. Just tell them that the chef sent you.
Yeah, what was that number again, Chef?
215-752-0560.
That's terrific. All right, we're going to carry on with the rest of our show. And we are back. It is the O&B Puckcast, episode number 166, as the Flyers are 5-2-1 for the third season in a row after 8 games. What does it all mean? Before we get into that, just let's introduce our panel. Back with me and to my left, as always, is Chef B. How are you, my friend?
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much. And enjoying a surprisingly fun hockey to watch. And I'll just leave it at that for now. I'm loving it.
Yeah. You know, that's good stuff. And back with us, we always love to have him along. He's as busy as I'm going to be over the next couple of weeks. Is always the great Dan Silver. How you doing, man?
Great. It's win town, man. Phillies winning, Eagles winning, Flyers winning. I don't even pay attention to basketball, so don't care. So it's great. We're winning, man. It's Philly, city of winners.
It is a city of winners
and sinners.
The Winnie of sinners. It's that too. Before we get rolling, just a reminder that the O&B Puckcast is on Twitter at O&B Puck at O&B Puck. We're also on Getter as a backup plan. Good to have these days at O&B Puckcast. And of course, we're on 12 or 13 different podcast platforms. This will be our last show on SoundCloud. That format has not proven popular with our fan base, but you can catch us on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Deezer, you name it. We're there. And of course, we have a YouTube channel. Check us out. Just punch in O&B Puckcast. And if you could subscribe or follow whatever applies for your favorite platform, we really do appreciate it. It moves us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcast. And yeah, we really appreciate your support, especially over the last little bit. We've seen that in your listenership. And with that, let's get going. Dan, you've been out a little bit. The Flyers have a lot of positive news, a lot of positive signs. And then there are some negative signs and some things off the ice that are on Flyers fans' minds. Where do you want to start tonight?
Positive. I heard Torts' interview yesterday. Glass is half full, baby.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, for me, the positives so far have been the play of Travis Konechny. He's been unbelievable. So Konechny, Kevin Hayes, Joel Farabee, Tony DeAngelo, Ivan Provorov, and of course Carter Hart. Those 6 guys, to me, have been dragging this team along so far this season. Those guys have been phenomenal. There have been some other, role players who I think have been playing very well too, but those guys have just been so good. DeAngelo is so talented and skilled. I was concerned before the season started about the mix with Provorov, and so far it's been great. So I'm hoping I was wrong there. And those two guys, kind of the skill can play off each other. It's a breath of fresh air watching D'Angelo out there and the way Konechny's been playing, because they're both so skilled and they're playing very well right now. And Carter Hart has been the best goalie in the league. So, for me, those things have been terrific and entertaining. Other guys have been playing well also. I'm sure we'll get into up and down the lineup. But I also thought that the Hurricanes game, even though they lost to the Hurricanes in overtime, I thought that it was arguably their best game of the season. I thought that periods 2 and 3 against a really good hockey team, I thought that the Flyers played very good hockey. And so, they're playing well. There's some guys who we needed to play well, both for now and for the future, that have looked really good. And I'm positive about this team. I mean, do I think they're going to make the playoffs? No, but they're fun to watch,
And that's the difference. I mean, even though the process, as you want to call it, is flawed, we all know that. We're not fooling ourselves. And the Flyers were 5-2-1 the last 3 seasons, right? After the last 8 games. Carter Hart is rocking a .938 save percentage. And Jackie Redmond from the NHL Network informs us he has stopped 46 of 47 high danger area chances going into last night's game. So, I mean, we're getting some otherworldly stuff. We don't know how long it's going to last. We know it can't last at this level, but hey, we're enjoying it, Chef.
Well, yeah, I think Dan hit the nail on the head with almost everything he said. I will say this: out of everybody who did shine and has shined, and I'm not saying he's not, and I think I got in trouble when I was talking about how he might have recovered, but Hayes is doing a lot better. And I appreciate that, and I like that. But I still think here and there, occasionally, I feel like he takes off a shift here and there. And I know he got benched in that one game, third period, a San Jose game. But I like overall the entire effort that this team puts out. And I think what it comes down to now is you can see they got self-respect for themselves in a game now. Is it funny? Because I've looked at every game now. This is how I used to look at the Flyers. If they were down by 2 goals before, I used to be like, oh, they'll come back. And then the last 2 years, I'm like, oh, we're screwed. Here comes another. It'll be 4-0 any minute now. I don't think like that. These first set of games here, I sit there and go, I wonder if they'll come out back tonight. And I'm still enthralled in the game because even though they're losing 2-0, the effort is still there, and their will and drive is still there. So it's still fun to watch. I'm not going, here they go, they're going to collapse again. So I think it's been so much rewarding to watch them so far this season.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, 3 out of the last 4 years, they're down 2-0 in most games. They're done. That's it. I mean, even if they do come back, they're still going to find a way to lose. And I don't think they found a way to lose last night as much as Carolina. The cream rose to the top. They made some mistakes, but it just had a different feel. The whole team has a different feel to it. And, there's some things I'm critical of, some things that we're worried about, in particular, some of these injuries. Why don't we tackle some of these one by one? JVR has a broken finger, required surgery. He's going to be out for about 6 weeks. And of course, we don't know what is going on with Cam Atkinson, kind of this year's mystery injury. I don't know if it's in the same category as Ryan Ellis, but as time goes on, can you blame us for wondering what the F is going on with this guy? We don't know. We don't, upper body, lower body. I have no idea. Maybe it's another psoas, heaven forbid, right? And of course, the biggest news, Dan, Sean Couturier back revision surgery. And I put a link out there for some guy who was, cocksure that everything's going to be fine, even though Sean Couturier, in the best case scenario, with the timeline that they provided, will not have played NHL hockey for over a year. What say you?
Yeah, I haven't never seen a team with injuries like this over the past few years. I mean, it sounds like you're making excuses, but it's unbelievable. I mean, between Ryan Ellis plays 4 games for the franchise and looks like he's completely done. And then this past offseason, Sean Couturier, comes out, he has the back surgery. They're hoping, he might be okay a couple months into the season. And now it comes out that he had back revision surgery. It doesn't sound good. I mean, they sent him to a specialist in Texas for the surgery. I mean, if you've got to send a guy to Texas for a surgery, and yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I will not be surprised if Sean Couturier never plays another hockey game. And actually, obviously, it's terrible for him and for his career and for his family. But for the Flyers, if he's going to be having injury problems, he's got 8 years still on his contract. Like, if let's just say that it comes out and unfortunately he can't come back and play. All right, so now you're going to be able to put him on long-term IR, and you're not going to have to, pay that money against the salary cap. So if Couturier can never play again, that's kind of like the silver lining on the situation, is that you can then use that money to go out and get someone who might be more effective, in the short and long term than Couturier. So, it's terrible, but there might be a silver lining to it. The Atkinson thing is like, it is so frustrating as a fan to have these guys sit in front of you, and that there's privacy issues and they can't tell you what's going on with him probably, but it's so strange. I mean, it seemed like Atkinson was ready to go, ready for the hockey season. The team's tweeting out videos of him showing up to the practice facility. Cam's ready to go. He knows Tortorella. He's fired up. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Cam Atkins is not ready for opening day. And now we're, a month into the season, 3 weeks into the season, and there's still no updates on what's going on. And it doesn't sound like a very promising situation. So that's a troubling one. And the JVR one real quick. I mean, with JVR, the main thing is we want to be able to trade him this year at the trade deadline to be able to get some kind of draft picks back. Of course, maybe they'll be in a playoff spot at that point and they won't want to, but as long as JVR is back, within 6 to 8 weeks, and he can come back and prove his value to a contender, it's okay.
The good thing though with JVR injury, he could still keep up with his cardio, keep in game shape. Could probably do some skating, a lot of skating probably, but with the Coots injury, and I know Isaiah is familiar with that part of it as well as I've been. I have back and neck problems as well, and I can tell you, I mean, just because you get a surgery doesn't mean everything's a-okay. It doesn't. I mean, you got to think of consequences by judging by where you are, and we're looking at it. I mean, a lot of people, it's hard for us to imagine going back to that physicality that these players do. I mean, if you're going to have surgery on your back and neck and you're going to be out 6 to 8 weeks and, recuperating on a couch somewhere, that's one thing. And then you go back to working either, at a desk or whatever it is, or working from home or whatever you do, that's one thing. But to go out and play professional sports at that intensity level and to think that there's not going to be any repercussions, the surgery situation is totally different from our layman point of view and from somebody that is a professional athlete. It's just completely different. The expectations are completely different.
Oh, that's the thing. For me, to just kind of pawn it off and say, hey, listen, the surgery didn't work out. Then he got an injection and it reduced the inflammation. He felt better, but then that kind of wore off. Now, you could say that the injection is a kind of like a diagnostic test for the surgery that he just got. But Dan made a good point. Here's the deal. When you fly somebody across the country, he's already in pain. And they have to consider, does he want to be on a plane? Can he get into a position? I don't know how addled he is by this particular condition he has. I'm assuming that it was in the lumbar spine area. So, because he's having trouble skating. So that's more than likely what we're talking about. And of course, there's a multitude of different procedures that he could have had for different reasons. Some are more acute in their onset. Some are more degenerative. We don't know. But the bottom line is, if they have to cut, you're talking about more scar tissue in the area. And my biggest concern is not necessarily that he's done. It's that the Sean Couturier that we knew won't be that guy if he does make it back. And that's a very common scenario. But that begs the question, Dan, if the Flyers are having a decent year and you look at the paucity of talent they have at the center position, I mean, depending on what happens with Couturier, and if you're more pessimistic, say 6 weeks down the road from now, okay, should the Flyers be looking at improving at least like a third line center to kind of bulk it up? And then it gets in with discussion about what the heck is going on with Morgan Frost. How much more runway does he have left with the Flyers?
So to take your latter one first, I mean, me and Bill Meltzer have probably been two of the biggest Morgan Frost supporters on Twitter. I mean, I can't really defend him anymore. I mean, I still think he's got a lot of skill, but he's just not assertive enough. He's not aggressive enough. He hasn't been able to get the puck enough to showcase those offensive skills. And he's running out of runway. I think that the only reason he's still on the team is because there's really no one else to play him. But I won't be surprised if they send him down soon. And I think that they will probably be trying to find some centers to bring in because, like you said, after Kevin Hayes, who do they have? I don't even know. Has Lawton been playing center? I'm not even sure. He has been. So, Kevin Hayes and Scott Lawton are really the only two NHL centers that they have on this roster. So just to be fair to this team, they're going to have to try and find someone unless Morgan Frost totally wakes up. And, but it seems like it's going to be a long project with him. And I think that they'll probably we'll see what happens with him, but I won't be surprised if they try to trade him or that they send him down because he's not playing many minutes right now. He's kind of in towards his doghouse. He's got to work his way out. And I don't know if he's assertive enough to do it.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's really funny. The pointed comments by John Tortorella, whose brutal honesty is really refreshing here. But when he said something like, Frost is supposed to be an offensive player, or so I've been told. Well, what does that tell you, right? So the only thing I could think of is like maybe he is a winger. He's more involved as a center. But then again, to see him get trucked by Stahl last night behind the net, that a lot of people, are going to have problems with Jordan Stahl. He's a big guy, but it's just, I don't know. I just, you see the talent and it just hasn't translated just yet. And I don't know how much more time he has left. Shep, what's your thoughts on any of that? And, whether the Flyers will possibly pursue another center?
Well, it's prepared. I think they're going to stall. I think you'll see call-ups from, the Phantoms here and there. Maybe give Jackson Case another go. Maybe or whatever they can do. Because I think, and Dan's right, they should probably go out and really seriously take a look at acquiring a third line center from somewhere. But I think what you're going to find out is they're afraid that if they do that, then they're acknowledging that this at least this season is over for Sean Couturier, and that this is a team that, by all accounts, everybody's watching on the game. You see a lot of interaction on Twitter, but it still hasn't resonated in the seats in the stadium yet. So people are still apprehensive and staying away. So they're more content right now to watch it on TV than put out that financial investment that is going down to a game. So I think that's where you stand. I think that by getting a third line center, they're kind of saying that they're giving up on Coots, quite possibly.
Or Frost. I mean, the thing is, getting a third liner doesn't solve a lot of problems. I don't think Scott Lawton is really a great third line center and hardly a second line center. So you could say that the lack of talent there is certainly an issue enough to do that. But it was good going back to after our last show. The Flyers have gone 2-1-1, and they beat the Preds, I guess, a week ago yesterday. And it was a breakout game for Joel Farabee. But the game everybody started really talking about, John Tortorella, Dan, was the do not play game. It was a 3-0 loss on a back-to-back versus the San Jose Sharks. And there was a message sent to Kevin Hayes and Travis Konechny, even though they were leading the Flyers in points and Konechny had been flying around. He made some mistakes with the puck. He didn't have quite the energy on that back-to-back, and that's something Torts was emphasizing in terms of we have to learn how to play those games, but he was also sending a message to probably his two top offensive players.
Yeah, and that's the thing where you're sort of like, oh, I guess, this is what Tortorella is all about. Because as you mentioned, Hayes and Konechny had been far and away the two best offensive players on this team all season long. I mean, it's only been, 8 games? And he sat them. I mean, pretty extraordinary for him to do that. Probably an overreaction, sending a message. But also the message was clearly received because Konechny came out the next game and was unbelievable. So you wonder if Tortorella is kind of like playing into his reputation a little bit by benching their best players that early in the season, but it also does send a very direct message. And he also said that he wanted to see kind of how some of the younger players would react to that. It's going to be a fascinating season because you can't expect your top players to perform every single night. It just doesn't happen, right? But Tortorella clearly is not going to accept when it doesn't happen. Now, maybe there's a difference between a guy just sort of being off and not having the energy versus making a couple bad turnovers, which, Konechny did. And maybe he's trying to drill into Konechny's head. Like, you can't turn the puck over like that, at your blue line. You just can't do it. But this season's going to be very entertaining. And a lot of it's because of how John Tortorella is going to manage things. I love watching his press conferences. He's so honest. You ask him about a player and he's honest. He tells you what he thinks. And I think it's great. It's refreshing. I mean, he's also willing to admit when he's wrong. They put Noah Cates at center. That was an experiment. And now he's back on the wing because he wasn't great at center. Like, a coach being able to acknowledge both when he makes mistakes and when other guys aren't performing up to par is very important.
No, I agree. Absolutely. So in coming back the way they did and Konechny bouncing back, he had two really nice plays versus the Panthers. And we got to talk about that game because the Flyers allowed either 104 or 109 shot attempts versus the Panthers in a game where Paul Maurice, the Panthers coach, was left saying, there's nothing we could have done. We played the way we wanted to play. I think the Flyers Corsi in that game was like in the 30s. And this has been the theme of the season. The Flyers are really getting by with the 940-ish goaltending of Carter Hart, but they're just, they're blocking every shot and they're never giving up. I guess the question becomes, Chef, is like, by the time February rolls around, we're going to have a bunch of guys on the disabled list with the, bumps and bruises from blocking all these shots and losing the possession battle almost every night.
Yeah, it's a fun recipe right now, and it'll continue to be fun throughout the whole season. I do believe that, but it can't sustain itself. As sometimes, having these rough and tumble games. I mean, granted, their conditioning is a lot better than it's probably been in years. I just can't see them sustaining this model of play and walking away with the same amount of wins. Like I think this is kind of like what we expected from this team. I think we talked about it, all three of us ad nauseum. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be play above their actual skill level and have and be entertaining games like this. But I don't think any of us thought they would have a winning record at this point. I thought that they would be in these games, and you can flip all those scores in all those games, and I would have told you, okay, that makes more sense to me. I thought the game they should have been almost dominant was the San Jose game, and they came up lame. So I think that what we're getting is what we're expecting to see. Except the end result is they're winning these 1-goal games or these 2-goal games, whereas we thought they were going to lose them.
Right. And the positive news there, even though we expect that word that we hate called regression, is the fight, the character, the way they stand up for each other, the way they battle for every puck when they're on their game. And, we saw that last night. They were down 2-0 to the Canes in a game they eventually lost 4-3 in overtime. But we saw some other players contributing. We had Tippett last night showing some speed, even defensively, where he got back on a play and prevented a breakaway. That fourth line, not like these are not the guys that you're going to go to war with and win a lot of games with. But with Sedlak has probably as much skill and speed as any fourth line centers in recent memory. I know it's maybe holding back a younger player, but he is a nifty little player. But like Delorier and Allison gets that goal. So, they really battled. And I think, the Canes, Dan, if you remember that over time, let me see if you were in the same wavelength. They had Lawton out there with Farabee and Provorov. And the first thing that came to mind when I'm looking at who they're playing against, the Canes, all those guys are nifty puck handlers. They see the ice well. And the Flyers have three guys that can't handle the puck very well. I mean, Farabee is the best of the bunch. I said, they're going to lose on one of their shifts. They didn't get it the first time. They got their butts kicked the second time. And it was obvious. They couldn't control the play. And once they had the puck, they were going to give it up because they're easy to get the puck. They didn't have a strong enough stick. What say you?
Yeah, but the problem is you can't have Konechny, Hayes, and D'Angelo out there for the whole overtime. I mean, and you're probably not going to only use Sanheim and D'Angelo. So you got to use Sanheim, Provorov, and D'Angelo. I guess maybe you could stagger the defensemen with the forwards, to better have guys who are puck controllers out there. But the bottom line is they're not a very good puck control team. I mean, I was wondering who they were going to have out there other than those four guys. I think that there was one shift where Cates was out there, maybe with Owen Tippett or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's one of the issues with this team now is Torts has shortened the bench so much because he doesn't have any confidence in guys like Morgan Frost and Allison. He's basically rolling 9 forwards. I mean, he's rolling with, Konechny, Farabee, and Hayes, Lawton, Cates, and Delorier, and then Sedlak, and Tippett, and then you've got Sedlak, McEwen. I don't even know Allison. Yeah, I mean that's basically that's only the 9 forwards that he has any confidence in at this point. I mean, he doesn't have a confidence in Frost, doesn't have confidence in Lazinski. So that's going to be a problem with shortening the bench. And look, we've talked about they've gotten lucky to win a lot of these games early on because of how well Carter Hart has played, right? So I thought they played really well against Carolina. But, the reality is, and we're going to get into the negatives at some point, I mean, they've just been getting outshot and out puck controlled so much that it's kind of a miracle that their record is what it is. And we don't expect it to last, especially with the way that Torts is shortening the bench. I mean, at some point he keeps playing Hayes and Konechny like this. They're going to get exhausted at some point, and it might not be that far into the season.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Chef, I'll be with you in a second. I just wanted to mention that there is a downside when you start shortening your bench and you look more veteran with guys like Sedlak, and it has been useful. And Nick Delorier has had some intangibles that have translated to some nice plays, a goal the other night. But, this is also a season where you got to find out what you have. And we're only in game 8. I get it, up to game 8. But this does create that dynamic. And I was speaking with one of the pundits that we have on the show and said, nobody develops when you do this. So you're trying to win, but you're defeating the other purpose, Chef.
Yeah. I know the problem is, I know what we have and I'm resigned to it. I think I'm not expecting anything more exciting, I guess, to come out of this. Although I do expect like some people just to keep, going out on the list. I mean, JVR's injury. Let me just speak to that as the example. He put himself there. He blocked his shot. He put his stick out. It was like one of those freak things. Ran up and hit your finger straight on. So it probably busted the bone, popped it through, and that's probably because most of the time, how many times I don't know about you, I broke my finger plenty of times playing hockey, not roller hockey, street hockey, or whatever, and I just taped it. My mom was an X-ray tech; she just tape it to the other one, and that's it. And that's why I got crooked fingers. But but the point being, at some point, all this is going to catch up to, and you're going to have like even more guys that Dan was talking about and on injury list, and it's going to be, it's not prevalent now because it's still early and you still got like wiggle room with some of these players, but I just see this, foresee it coming down the line there, that there's going to, that the injuries are going to pile up, especially if you keep leaning heavily on, those 6, 7 people, 8 people, 9 people that Dan and you had brought up. They're averaging like, there's how many guys on the team average over 20 minutes a game? There's decent amount. Like it's like 5 or 6 guys now. And it's just, see other players like, well, he's 9 minutes. And then you got people.
It's like 7. Yeah.
24. What is 20 minutes for Hayes and Konecny?
Well, you have D'Angelo, Provorov, Sanheim, Farabee, and then you have Konecny and Lawton are 19 and change. Hayes is 19 and change. Even though Cates is 18. So there you go. And then you have the Midlands and below.
Justin Braun is almost 17 minutes a game. That's kind of funny. I mean, how much longer are we going to ask him to play above his pay grade, his durability? And then after that, it drops into like 13s and under. So, I mean, it's not like everything else on this team right now. It's not sustainable. At some point, these younger players, they need to take that next step. And if Wade Allison or Tippett and all them are not going to be consistent about their play, they're not going to get that next step, and you're going to have to go somewhere else and find it, and they'll be resigned to bottom 6 players.
Right. Well, yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, the Flyers are doing it with a combination of improved special teams that are slightly better than average on the PK and on the power play. And, of course, the save percentage is .927 overall, including Sandstrom, and .938, I believe, with Carter Hart, who's played all but 2 games. So, what's going to give or who's going to step up and make a change. So what can you say, Dan? I mean, you got the Phillies in the World Series. The Eagles are 7-0. The Sixers are kind of scuffling, but they're kind of in the back burner right now. But while that's happening, and you had the injury to JVR, they claimed Kiefer Bellows off of waivers from the New York Islanders. And the feeling around the league seems to be he can really shoot the puck, but the rest of his game hasn't really evolved. And here he is getting another chance with the Flyers at the NHL.
Yeah, Kiefer Bellows is a funny one. I mean, when we were back at the 2016 draft, there were some people, everyone always wants the Flyers to take snipers. They don't have any snipers. So there was a lot of people that wanted them to take Kiefer Bellows. I was not a fan of Kiefer Bellows because he's got a good shot, but it's like that's all he can do. Guys like Cole Caulfield. Cole Caulfield is super skilled. He's a very good skater. He's tricky. He's tricky with the puck. There's a difference between a guy like Cole Caulfield and Kiefer Bellows. Kiefer Bellows is just kind of a one-dimensional shooter who's got to be set up by his teammates and needs to be in the right spot to score. And he just never really evolved upon getting into the NHL. And when a team gives up on him, so the Flyers traded down that year. People were mad. They wanted him to take Bellows. The Flyers took German Rupsov, who's a disaster in and of himself. Wasn't really a great part of the draft that year. And so, they claimed Kiefer Bellows. There's obviously that connection, right? He's from Minnesota, and Chuck Fletcher loves his Minnesota guys. So there were a lot of people joking, he's definitely going to claim Kiefer Bellows. And of course, they claim Kiefer Bellows. Look, there's no downside. If he doesn't work out, it's fine. You just kind of can cut ties with him. But do I think it's going to work out? No, I don't think it's going to work out. I mean, he's like Owen Tippett, except Owen Tippett is a much better skater than Kiefer Bellows is, and he plays more of a hard-nosed game. So he's sort of like a poor man's Owen Tippett, but doesn't have a lot of the same skills. So I wasn't surprised that they claimed Kiefer Bellows, but I don't think he's a fit on this team.
They're looking for younger guys like this, and it's an opportunity. And the Flyers are an ideal kind of team, a good situation for him. But when you're benching guys like Frost and Allison because Torts says they're overwhelmed by the skill and the talent of the Panthers, and we're going to start seeing this more and more, you wonder how much of a revolving door we're going to see here. But
I'm thinking at this point, I understand you. I kind of understand it's going to be a rough ride because at one point, like, okay, Flyers fans are pretty much, they're not stupid as like a lot of other people would like you to think. They kind of know what's going on. They know what to expect. They know what the team needs and how to run a team. So at one point, you have the same people calling for like heads to roll if like a Kevin Hayes is going to dog it, or if somebody doesn't play good enough, Morgan Frost is this and he should be this, and if they don't perform, they want him bench. But at the same time, they're complaining that the kids, or this person, and if the kid is the kid players that they keep referring to are starstruck or awestruck, or maybe just like their skill level hasn't caught up to their minds yet, their hockey minds, and they seem to be standing around a lot about out there watching play happen instead of making it happen. And I think these are the growing pains we were going to see this year. It's just the thing is, the problem is if they were losing these games, everybody would be like, oh, all right, we're on this it's easier to look at this team and accept the fact that they're going to lose a lot of games, but it's hard to look at team at this point and look at them in first place and go, oh my gosh, how are they winning? And the recipe for what's going to come is not, like you said, it's not going to sustain itself, and you're going to be stuck now. You're going to be doing this stuff for the rest of the year, like going, well, what the hell? And it's just something we're going to have to put up with. We're not going to be able to change our minds because we're all in right now.
Yeah. And then think about Tortorella was saying about, what he is emphasizing is that they have find a way to hold it together and play in important spurts, as he put it. The power play's been important. This is where Tony DeAngelo and his concept of space on the ice is another level beyond what we were getting even when Gostisbehere was there. You can see he's a better player, and he can comfortably stay in that role. He might be more of a better second pair guy, but there's some good things going on. But Dan, I think the thing that was most interesting that people talked about, I think it was a little bit overblown, when they took the analytics are trash kind of comment from him. And if you look at the whole comment, he said that I have certain analytics that I think are good, and I think most of them are trash because I believe in the eye test and stuff. But they probably saying in-house, we have some numbers we like that we lean upon, whether he uses them as a backup or in conjunction, what have you. And people really ran with that, like he was trashing analytics, and a little bit late in the hour to be going there.
Yeah, well, Torts has got the reputation, right? I mean, last year on TV, he kind of took a shot at Trevor Zegras when he did that Michigan play behind the net where he lift up the puck and, kind of showboating. And Torts is kind of the reputation of the old school mentality. And I think the whole anti-analytics thing kind of plays into it. Look, I think he knows that some analytics can be helpful. He's not a guy that's going to be always looking at the analytics. He's going to rely on people to kind of look at them for him and tell him what they mean. But this organization clearly is not that big on analytics. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed Rasmus Ristolainen to a multi-year extension. So it just depends on what you're looking at. I mean, the analytics that the Flyers are getting crushed on this year are shot attempts. I mean, that's not really an advanced analytic. It's pretty simple. It's a shot attempt, right? Like pretty basic. Sometimes I think the fact that people say advanced analytics and kind of people out there associate it with this very fancy, hard to understand stuff. And some of those analytics can be like that, but a lot of them are just, very simple. It's not right. It's not just wins and losses, but it's also not that complicated. So I think Torts kind of like plays into his image a little bit when he makes comments like that. But as you said, if you read the whole quote, it's clear that they pay some attention to it. But, I don't think any team out there, fully pays attention to it. I mean, Seattle really beefed up their analytics department. It doesn't seem to be helping them very much.
Well, that's the thing. The Flyers did beef up their analytics department over the offseason in terms of going through the some level of aggressiveness, because as I hung on to that word, grasping and clinging, bitterly clinging to the aggressive retool of some kind in some area, in some department, somewhere in some small corner of the organization. But yeah, I mean, again, it does speak to the idea that they had to sign Rasmus Ristolainen, and that it's just still always stick in my craw. So
well, with Torts,
yeah.
with Torts though, if he doesn't, that's also too, that's a burn thing for him too. It's part of what you get when you get Torts. See, when you're talking, the biggest problem with this team was the culture. The biggest recipe for a culture is somebody who come in and will just burn it to the ground and do what he does. Okay. Does he, like Dan said, he probably has some kind of analytics that he follows, or he has people explain to him, all right, I just want to know how much am I playing this guy? All right, that's it. How much is this or whatever. And he gets what he does. He picks and chooses, but it's like a recipe for him. That's part of his ingredient, is to sit there and be the no nonsense kind of guy and yelling at, and also they kind of made him, by not doing anything bigger in the all season, the main attraction for this team. So one of the most popular shows on TV, the ones that, like, example being the cooking shows like Hell's Kitchen or something. Why do you watch Hell's Kitchen? To see Gordon Ramsay go off and yell at somebody and make them cry, or do something crazy and yelling, something that you're like, oh my God, that's so stupid, but it works. That kind of mentality. And I think that's the magic at Tortorella. And that's just, he's just feeding it. This is his recipe for his season.
Okay, so getting down to brass tacks, the Flyers, they hit the road for 3 games. They go to Madison Square Garden to play the Rangers on Tuesday night, the 1st. Then the next night, in this back-to-back, they go to Toronto and play the Leafs, who've been struggling, especially offensively with all that talent. And then a couple nights off, they end up in Ottawa on Saturday night. And they resume their schedule after that on a Tuesday versus the St. Louis Blues in a home tilt at the Wells Fargo Center. So I guess the question now is, if you're going to shorten your bench, it's like, where else are they going to look for talent? They're not. I can't imagine they're going to do anything more than pickups and things like that they've been doing. It's like, Dan, is there anybody to call up? I mean, I've looked at Ole Lycksell a little bit. They don't want to rush Tyson Forster. So, and they're looking for centers. Does that mean they're going to call up Jackson Cates again? I mean, these are the things that come to mind as Torts shortens his bench and they look to get a better performance from more players in the lineup.
Yeah, the pickings are very slim when you look in the AHL of who they could call up. I mean, like you mentioned, Forster, I think they want to get AHL minutes.
Yeah.
Ole Lycksell, they had him up here, then they sent him back down, so clearly not all that impressed. Elliot Desnoyers is promising young player, but again, I think they want him to get AHL minutes. Isaac Ratcliffe is a guy they could call up, but I don't think Torts is going to really like his game all that much. Hayden Hodgson, Torts doesn't like him. Zade Wilson, they want him to get AHL time. Jackson Cates, okay, they could call up Jackson Cates, but we know what he is. He's not a very good NHL player. That's about the extent of the guys they could call up front. The Phantoms are not a very good team. So, I mean, this all plays into why hopefully they can find someone out there. But it's so early in the season that it's going to be very difficult to find guys who can help this team. I mean, they brought in Lucas Sedlak on waivers, and he's actually been okay. But, like, that's the kind of guy you're going to find at this point. So there's really not much help for this team right now other than in the organization.
No, and that's it. So he's getting blood from a stone. That's really what we're getting from the Philadelphia Flyers. And we can't get depressed if things start crumbling a little bit here and there. We want to see that competitiveness. And like Tortorella said in the same press conference, when we was talking about the analytics, it's he's going to try to teach them and show them the right way and get them consistently to do certain things on the ice a certain way, as he's trying to rebuild who they are and the culture in the room and the expectations that used to be taken for granted here. So I think we covered what's been going on over the last little bit here. And gents, is there anything else that you would like to discuss before we kind of wrap it up for tonight. Chef, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I just want people to just like be happy with what you got. I know everybody's complaining about other stuff, about the team not being complete. That's all, but just you know what, they're 5-2-1. Enjoy the fact. Enjoy some of these games. Don't let the fact that the team isn't going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Please don't let that stop you from enjoying a hockey game, which is I think is the most important thing right now. I mean, look, they're going to have their growing pains, but they're winning in spite of themselves. So you got to just sit back and enjoy it. It's okay to enjoy watching the Flyers win a game. It's okay still.
They're a scrappy, never say die bunch that's probably going to lose a hell of a lot more games than they win. And hopefully it'll work out where they accomplish the cultural and identity things and the habits and all those types of things, and yet still be rewarded with a pretty good draft pick in a great upcoming draft. I mean, that's the way I look at it, Dan.
Yeah, no, that's what it is. I mean, let's enjoy this. Like we've all kind of talked about like, oh man, what if we tank and get Connor Bedard? Like it's not, the players won't tank, right? That's not how it works. So we don't control, as a fan, you don't control the outcomes of the games, right? So why would you root for them not to do well when you don't control it, right? You're a Flyers fan. We're all Flyers fans. We want to root for them and cheer for them and be happy when they win and score. So we should, even though we know that if they lost every game this season, ultimately it would be for the best, right? Will we end up with Bedard or Fantilli or Michkov? But that's not the reality. We don't control the reality. So let's just root for this team, have fun when they win. And it's kind of the way I look at it.
So Dan, where can people find you on Twitter, and what do you got coming up soon?
Oh, they can find me on Twitter at dsilver88. And if you're a horse racing fan, it's one of the biggest weeks of the year for horse racing. The Breeders' Cup's coming up this coming weekend. I'll probably put some picks out there. I had a really good day today betting on racing, and I'll put some picks up for the Breeders' Cup later this week. I got to do all my video research and analysis, but that, and then my wife's over in Africa, so I'm next Sunday I'm getting on a plane and I'm going to go over to Africa for 2 weeks. So if I get impaled by a rhino or a hippo or eaten by a lion, it was nice knowing you guys.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
Wow. If we hear about it, we'll hear about it at dsilver88. Somebody will be kind enough to let us know.
I don't know if I'm gonna have internet access, but if I am, I'll post some lion photos up on Twitter.
Oh, cool. And now, what part? What country?
Zambia.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. Beautiful.
Yeah. I'm very excited. Going to the Victoria Falls. It should be great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I guess you could find me at Chef to Left B on Twitter. And if you want to talk to me, that's fine. If you don't, if you want to bash my I guess my opinions of some of the Flyers out there dogging it, by all means, give it to me. I think it's fun. I love a good argument. I love the fact that we can all sit there and talk about our team, the Flyers, and still have fun watching these games for right now. So this is awesome.
Great. And they can find you at Chef to the Left B on Twitter. And that's the number 2. Chef to the Left B, and you can find me, Isaiah, at Isaiah, ISAIAH _520 Isaiah. Don't forget that _520, and of course the O&B Puckcast at O&B Puck on Twitter. And again, this will probably be our last show on SoundCloud. We just have not had the kind of feedback from people that we get from Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google, Radio Public, Deezer, and on YouTube. I mean, you got a lot of places you can listen to us, and we appreciate you, your listenership, regardless of what platform that you follow us on. If you're really upset that we're going to leave SoundCloud, let us know. Check us out at O&B Puck and give us some feedback or a DM at the Puckcast account. And we'll certainly keep that in consideration. So I am going to be relocating and taking my talents to Central West Florida in Tampa. And I'm going to try to get a show on the air either the 7th, Monday, or the 9th, Wednesday, one of those days. hopefully we can get together and talk about those 4 or 5 Flyers games. And I appreciate your forbearance as we go through this transition. But until then, everybody, let's go Flyers and take care.